Hey, it's Wanda here with another episode of the Empowered Empaths. I'm here to remind you that you're here for a reason, that you chose to be here on the planet during this time, during this greatest transition in history. And you chose here not from your personality, but it's a soul choice. This is why I believe that the greatest thing that we can do is become empowered because we're no longer a slave to our reactions. So I want to ask you, what story are you telling about what's possible for you? I know, because I work with so many of you, I know that you're here to change the world. I know that what you have lived and what you have survived is exactly what somebody else needs to hear. I know that your stories about your vulnerability and what you've learned are exactly what the world needs right now in a world that's waking up from this deep slumber of separation. So, what story are you telling yourself about what's possible for you? I think so many of us said, oh, I'll just not deal with me and I'll make the world a better place. But it doesn't work that way. The world unfolds from within each of us. We have to imagine a new world. And this is what I want to get into today about what are you imagining? Until we know better, we're always telling the story of I'm not healed, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not acceptable the way I am, I'm not heard, I'm not safe, I'm afraid. And all of that is really just our wounds. We are always trying to compensate for our perceived failings. And I'm just going to say perceived, but they're not, they were a lens. So all this aligns with the premise behind the Enneagram. And if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, it's a system based on 9 strategies that we all use to relate to and to react to the world. Its roots are in ancient Sufi wisdom, and it was brought to the West in the early 1900s by a Russian philosopher, uh, Gurdjieff. I think I'm saying that correctly. So, our physical world, so let's just get into this. Our physical world is all about duality and polarity. It's all about the contrast. We chose to limit ourselves, being all that is, who you really are. We chose to limit ourselves to perceive the world through some perceived limitations or a limited identity because we chose to know who we're not, to know who we really are in the end. We are the way the infinite expands. Infinity isn't some unchanging state. It's the nature of infinity is always expanding, and it expands through you by what you're learning. So with the Enneagram, there's lots of information on the Enneagram, and it basically splits up our personalities to 9 different types. It's 9 different ways that we chose to limit who we are. 9 different wounds. I'm making this very simple. Some of you, I'm sure, who are listening, know a lot about the Enneagram. I like it because it helps us understand what we're compensating for. When it comes to the story that we tell about our potential, about what's possible, most of those stories are sourced from that wound, from our I am not or I don't have. We then go about getting our validation from the outside world. This is what the Enneagram tells us, and it's also behavioral psychology. While many believe that we need to fix and heal these wounds, I'm here to say we don't. There's really nothing to fix or heal. It was an experience that created a lens, just a lens. Because that lens, that old saying that the crack is how the light comes in. So there's nothing to fix. It was an experience. And from your experience, you've learned who you're not. You've learned as a creator who you're not, as all that is. You've learned who you're not. So the opposite is, who are you? The lens, and this is what I really want to get to today, the lens now helps you better understand what so many in the world are just moving through. The I'm not enough, I'm not heard, I can't do anything right, I'm powerless, all that. That wound, that lens that you deliberately chose as a soul before you took on a body is exactly what you're here to help others with, who don't know what you know, who haven't lived the life that you have lived. And it's exactly what they're calling for right now. But how do you create a different life experience that's not based on, I'm not enough, I'm powerless? How do you create a life you'd love to live and create the impact that you're here to make to help other people? And this is sounds ridiculously simple, but but the truth is always simple. Start telling a different story. Start imagining different outcomes. Start telling the story that you're already who you desire to be. Stop relying solely on your 5 physical senses and realize that you're multidimensional. There are other versions of you who don't have that lens of the wound that you experienced as a child. Use your imagination. Your imagination is the link between your logical mind and your higher mind. Wayne Dyer said that we have to believe it to see it. Just take a look at the world. There's a whole lot of people suffering because they're only using their logical minds. They're only using their 5 physical senses. And the logical mind is only the interface for the physical world. It doesn't create anything. Our physical mind knows what is happening and what did happen. Our physical senses are here to keep us focused in this physical world. But you are so much more. You're all that is. Again, who chose to be here for a very specific reason. And that part of you that is not physical is the part of you that creates everything. Neville Goddard, who was a Christian mystic, who was way ahead of his time, way before we had neuroscience. Some of you are Neville Goddard people. Neville Goddard said, when imagination matches your inner speech to fulfill desire, there will be a straight path in yourself from without outward. So what does that mean? So you imagine what you'd love. You would imagine a thriving business. You imagine impacting millions. You imagine, maybe you're imagining a new home. You imagine what you would love. And then you tell the story of how you'd like things to be. It's our inner speech. Our inner speech, when it matches that imagination, creates magic, creates opportunities, synchronicities, ideas, clarity. But this is the key. We've got to tell the story of how we'd like things to be. And it's not about ignoring reality, the outside reality. We don't ignore it at all. It's about not allowing circumstances and situations that we don't prefer to define us. most people let the money or the job or the lack of the money or the lack of the job define who we are instead of our wish fulfilled. We think that what's happening out there in the world or in our lives makes us feel certain ways, but that's not true at all. What makes us feel what we feel is that identity, that story, that wound. It's who we believe we are. Again, it's that lens that was just one lens, and we can change that lens. But it's what most people are doing. 3D events don't create those feelings of doubt or of being judged. You may sit down at your desk to do some work and you may think, oh, I'm not clear. It's not anything outside of us, ever. It's the story we tell ourselves about ourselves and the world. And you can see very clearly that most people are telling the story of what they don't want. They're telling the story of their worst fears. Oh, what if I don't get the job? Look at all this hatred in the world. I'm powerless against all this. I don't know how. I don't know how to create more money. I don't know how to create more clients. What if I do this strategy? Most people are coming from a place of lack, of I am not, or I don't have. Does this make sense? Do you see this? The loudest voice in our head is, I am not. And we've grown up and then tacked on, we've grown up believing that and then tacked on validation, because this is just how it works. We have a belief, and then our subconscious looks for proof. See, you're not enough. See, you didn't get the money. See, you put yourself out there and they judged you. We can change this. We are not those limitations. We're not those fears or those doubts. We're not that wound, which was just a lens. There's a booming voice behind the voice of, behind that loud one. The ego is a really loud voice, but there's another booming voice behind that. And it's the voice of I call it your inner genius. It's the voice of source. And when we stop listening to the voice of I am not, I'm not enough, or I don't have, when we stop listening to the doubts, that voice of who we really are does boom. And it tells us, go here, do this. So our part in this physicalized world is to start telling a new story, along with imagining a new story. Go to the end, imagine what you'd love. Imagine those clients coming in from out of the blue. Imagine perfect clients. Imagine you telling your story in a perfect way. And imagine people saying, oh my God, I've been waiting for this. This changed everything for me. Your story, your new story, along with your imagination, changes everything. We tell a new story, our subconscious is always listening. And so it will put that new story on autopilot. It's no different than the story of your wound that you decided to experience. So when you tell the new story, it puts that on autopilot, and then it starts showing you, see, here's proof. Here's proof. You could say, what if you're here to impact 1 million people? If you would start to tell that story and imagine it, I can guarantee you that you will start getting the proof. Within a few days, people will start saying, your story changed my life. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. If you start telling a different story about anything, we get the proof. We're not limited. None of us is limited. We're all that is, choosing to be partially in a body, choosing to be here right now, choosing to become empowered so that we empower other people. You're not broken and in need of healing. There's nothing to fix. That lens that some people say, oh, I need to heal it and fix it, and I have shame around it. No, that lens is your unique gift to the world because you know so much about it. You know so much about it. It's caused you to explore. It's caused you to love yourself more. That's what people need right now. So I want to ask you, how outrageous can your new story be? How outrageous can you let your imagination be? Don't fall into the trap and looking at what's going on in your life and let that determine what's possible. What if everything was possible? What if it was all easy? What if it could be fun? What if it didn't feel like work? What if it made you want to get up in the morning and love your life? What would you imagine? How good could it be? How outrageous can your new story be? How about, money falls into my lap from just out of the blue. Everything is always working in my favor. I have a wait list of new perfect clients. The world is waiting for what I am ready to share. Life adores me. I love my new perfect job. We have to be it to see it, friends. We have to become the version of ourselves on the inside who is living that outrageous story, who's living an abundant life, who's being abundant, and whose lens is different than the limited wound that we chose when we came in. Again, your wound is your gift to the world. When you understand that, it changes everything. But start to tell an outrageous story. Like, money always finds me. So many people have issues with money. I can't think of any other people better wired to change the money paradigm than us, who have focused on love and non-judgment and generosity. So change your money story if that's ready to change. Do it for a couple of days. I actually have a challenge for you at the end of this. Imagine every morning that life that you would love to live, that is beyond anything you have ever let yourself dream up. Maybe it's a perfect relationship. Maybe it's maybe it's a vacation in Costa Rica. That's what I'm dreaming up right now. I can feel my bare feet walking on the sand, in the sand, and feel the water. That's how we use our imagination. We can imagine anything. And again, what most people are doing are using their imaginations for worst case scenarios. What if the money doesn't come? What if fear-based scenarios? Stop that, realize when you're doing it, and just tell a different story. Do this. Here's my challenge to you. Do this for 3 days. Be it to see it. Match your inner speech with your wildest dreams. Do it for 3 days. Be the change. I think Gandhi said this: be the change that you want to see. Be peace, feel peace. See what's going on in the outside world. There's not a whole lot of peace right now. Here in the United States, we haven't been this divided in a very long time, probably since the Civil War. But be what you want to see. Be the alchemist. Look at what's going on in the world and just use it to decide what you'd prefer to experience, and then experience it internally. Imagine it. Match your speech to it. Perhaps you'd say, people are waking up so quickly now. There's a wave of peace hitting the planet in its visceral. What would you love to imagine into existence for the world and for your life? And then imagine that and match your speech, your inner speech. We're always thinking to ourselves. We're always doing it. It's the thing that absolutely changed my life several years ago when I stopped the mental chatter. And I have one of those minds that can really chatter on. But it was about negative scenarios. And when I started to imagine, pretend, like we did as kids, everything changed. Because here's what you're doing. You're actually telling creation how to show up. You're telling, to get a little woo here, you're telling God particles or adamantine particles how to show up. Because everything in your life is you. It looks like there's an out there, but there's really not. It's just all you. It's a hologram. And you get to decide what shows up. It's totally up to you. We can choose. So that's my challenge to you, friends, for the next 3 days. What are you going to speak into form? What do you want to see? We have to be it and speak it to see it. Let me know how this works. And thanks for listening. Thank you for your service in the world. Thank you for your support. Hit share and subscribe if this resonates, and much, much love to you. Thanks.